Okay, it's 9 o'clock. Good morning. This is Deschutes County Board of Commissioners meeting, 9 a.m. Wednesday, February 5th, 2025. First item on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time is citizen input for items not on the agenda. Is there anyone in the room? Anyone remote? Okay, so thank you very much. At this time, consent agenda. 4 items today.
I'd actually like to pull item number 1 just for a discussion.
Sure, that's fine. So I support that. Is there a motion for the other 3 items?
So move the other 3.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded for items 2, 3, and 4 on the consent agenda today. Calling for the vote, Commissioner Dare.
Just to clarify, items 5, 6, and 7 are also on the consent agenda.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Yeah, the way that's structured.
Different.
Well, yeah, so I'll just acknowledge that. So yeah, as I say, wasn't looking down there. So as the governing body of Sun River Service District, a resolution for supplemental budget. Just that item?
And 6 and 7.
6 and
So
7.
it should be 2 through 7 if you
Okay.
want to move the consent agenda.
Yep. So Facility Review Committee and then minutes from January 24th. Yeah, I guess hadn't looked at the agenda.
Second approval of the consent agenda, items
those.
2, 3, 4, 6, and 7.
Well, 5 also.
Don't we have to convene separately as the governing body?
You can do it all together for the consent agenda since it's just noted on the agenda.
All right.
So all consent agenda items but 1. So you support that, Commissioner Dare?
Yes, I do.
And you do?
Second.
Okay. So calling for the vote, Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
and Chair will vote yes. So at this time, back to item number 1, approval to accept an Oregon Health Authority Health-Related Social Needs Housing Grant. This is our first item. So is Kara Cronin possibly available? Oh, thank you very much. Come on up and say hi.
Good morning, Commissioner.
morning.
Cronin, Intensive Adult Services Program Manager with Health Services Division.
Commissioner Dare.
Okay, so Mike, what I noticed about this is because I was trying to help someone with housing needs. They needed help with funding their deposit. They were moving. They weren't homeless, but they were on that verge, right? So I make some calls for them. I'm trying to find funding, and I noticed that this on the agenda is called Social Housing Needs Grant. So I'm thinking, okay, there's going to be some housing funds in here for someone in our community. And I know there's lots of people in our community that have horrible utility bills now. They have housing deposits, all those kind of things. And yet, so that's what it said. It's authorized, rental assistance and temporary housing, et cetera, deposits, payments, utility bills for up to 6 months. That's what the first page says. But then this funding, our funding, the $241,000 is going to fund a new person for $241,624. And then $62,700 is going to cover psychiatric provider care. But I'm telling you, our community needs dollars. I checked with several people. I could not find any funding for people in our community last week. And I'm going like, okay, we're hiring another person, but where are those people that are getting terrible utility bills right now? Where are they going to find funding?
I'm going to clarify. So the funding is to support infrastructure. So we can invoice the state for actual rental assistance payments. So the 350 isn't inclusive of rental payments. This is infrastructure for people to support community members and accessing this funding. So it's essentially like pass through. We will pay someone's rent. We invoice the state, they pay us back.
But we need someone to administer that.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
there's funds beyond these 350,000
correct.
available to people who need housing assistance.
And this is all insurancy, but this is for open card members. So Pacific Source administers these funds for Pacific Source members and for people with open card, which is just another insurance type, Medicaid insurance type. Those folks will be able to access the funding through us.
so they either have to be a Pacific Source person or an open card person in order to get this funding?
It's Medicaid funding.
For this specific pot of
Yeah.
housing assistance.
And there's
Well,
other
there was no money out there for these people that I was trying to find last week.
impact.
Yes,
That would have been where I would have gone to.
yeah, anyway, that's why I wanted clarification on this, because I'm going, I know people are getting awful utility bills.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the clarity. Is there a motion?
Now I'll move approval of chair signature of document number 2025-016, accepting a grant from the Oregon Health Authority to deliver health-related social needs housing support services.
And I'll second it.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
and Chair will vote yes.
Well, I'll be texting that person that I'm trying to help and see if they're related to any of those two sources. Because I just was really incredibly frustrated. People think we have access to funding. I met a homeless woman a year ago, and it's not so easy to find that funding.
So Cara, for this particular pot of funds or this assistance resource, is it basically anyone who's on OHP will be eligible for this, or is it a subset of those?
Medicaid is eligible for this. Pacific Source does their pot of the pie, and we're not the only entity that's doing this. There's also Mosaic Medical is accepting this funding, so they'll have another pathway for people, but this is Medicaid funding.
Okay, thank you. So that at least for this pot of funding, that's a
And there's
simple way for us to sort of sort people and direct them towards this potential assistance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this time, item number 8, public hearing and consideration of a resolution submitting to the electors of the Black Butte Ranch Service District a proposal for a new 5-year local option levy to fund law enforcement services.
Mouthful, Commissioner. Hi, good morning. Dave Doyle, County Attorney. This is the time for the board to hold a public hearing and thereafter consider Resolution 2025-002, which will, as you indicate, submit to the electors in the Black Butte Ranch Service District an election on a new 5-year local option levy to fund law enforcement services. As you know, this is sort of a cyclical thing. I think this is the third one that I've been engaged with in the time I've been here. So every 5 years, Black Butte Ranch Service District puts on the ballot for the folks out there in Black Butte, the ability to approve an additional levy that funds law enforcement services. So I will note that the police chief and one of the board members are here today. Should you have any questions of them, or should they wish to provide any testimony when you open the public hearing? At the end of that, though, we would be asking that you would sign Resolution 2025-002. That begins the process to get this to the clerk, to get it published in the newspaper, and then to get it on the ballot in May for the folks out there. This is increasing from a 65-cent levy that will be expiring to 78 cents. And again, if you have questions, the chief and board member are here that can speak to that. So I would suggest that unless you have any questions of me right now, go ahead and open up the public hearing, see if there's any testimony, and proceed from there.
And if we could just clarify for the record that we're convening as the governing body for the Black Butte Ranch Service District. Thanks.
So acknowledged. So as the Black Butte Ranch Service District governing body in partnership with the Black Butte Ranch Board, this is opening the public hearing on the resolution for putting this proposal for a 5-year option levy before the electors. Is there anybody in the room to testify in this matter? And if you'd like to come join us, please do as a board member or chief out there. Okay.
Good morning, everybody. My only testimony is that, first of all, I'd like to thank you for your time and consideration of this matter.
And yeah, just
Yes, sorry about
For the
that.
record.
Chief Todd Rich, Black Butte Ranch Police Department. As I was saying, thank you for taking this under your consideration. I feel this is a fair request of our community. It will help us fund items such as increased cost for our PERS. We are also negotiating a new contract for officers, trying to get them a little bit closer to a reasonable pay wage compared to other officers in Central Oregon. And also will help with cover some gaps in our health insurance plan. That's increased quite a bit on our end too, about 76.5% on that line item alone. So I feel like this is a fair request on our half. It's not luxurious in any manner. It'll get our bills paid and keep us moving forward. So if you have any questions for myself.
great. Thank you so much. And hello, thanks for joining us.
Hi, I'm Susan Waddell. I am the chair of the Black Butte District Managing Board. And I'm here to support this resolution and appreciate it if you would approve it. We have done our best to do cost-cutting measures, and so we didn't have to go out for too much more on this levy. But we have reduced from 7 sworn officers to 6 sworn officers in that effort. But we want to continue the same level of coverage that we have been able to provide to our community.
Great, thank you very much. Is there anyone online for this public hearing? Are there any questions from the commissioners or thoughts?
My one question is, sometimes when, I mean, this is a sunsetting levy that you're going to try to replace. So it's not, kind of brand new to the voters, but sometimes when public entities run a levy measure, they'll do polling in advance or at least some kinds of informal surveys of residents to try to understand, whether the voters are going to support it or not. Do you have you done any formal or informal surveying or polling, or do you have a feel from talking to people in the community about this measure?
Since I've been chief, and it's only been about 4 months, we haven't done any polling. Historically, this measure has passed pretty well, and Mr. Doyle can certainly speak to that better than I can. So we're confident it should pass.
Yes, commissioners, historically, this has passed in the 70 to 75% rate. So one would expect as much, but obviously there's no guarantees.
So even if you have a drop off of a few percent because of the increase, you're still probably in comfortable range.
Right. And I will make a pitch yet again that I've been making for a number of years here. Hopefully we get a year or two down the road and I would certainly encourage you folks as a governing body and working with the chief and the managing board to consider potentially reforming the district as we did with 911 with a higher permanent rate so that you're not in this cycle of coming back to the voters every 5 years and asking for some additional money. Otherwise, you're going to have to gut your police force. So we have that model. We did it with 911. As you know, I don't believe 911 has had to increase the levy rate since we did that. I think it's still at the historic rate that but it gives you that flexibility and it buys you 20, 30 years so that you're not coming forward every 5 years saying we need additional dollars to fund the police services out here. So I just plant that out there. It wouldn't be anything to do immediately, but certainly in the next maybe 2 to 3 years in the middle of this levy, assuming it passes, would be probably the best time to go to the voters out there and see if they'd be inclined to reform the district with a substantially higher permanent rate with assurances as we did with 911 that we wouldn't go anywhere near that top for a long, long time. But this was so that we wouldn't have to keep coming back every handful of years for these additional operating levies. Just a thought.
Yeah. Chair Waddell, is that has the board of the district discussed this?
Board has considered it. They wanted to get through this levy cycle, and then we will revisit it in a year or two. We've had several conversations with Mr. Doyle about this.
Great. Thank you.
When our finance folks can help really think about what, what does that trajectory look like? What's a focal point for the rate that could be the permanent rate? So we can help in the finance evaluation of that also. But as I say, that's future. So for today's proposed resolution, any other thoughts, Commissioner Dare?
Well, I was just out there Friday night for dinner. So really want to commend you on your lodge. It's absolutely spectacularly beautiful. So it was great, and the room was fairly full. In the middle of winter, at least it wasn't snowing like last year when I went for Valentine's Day and I had to drive home in the snow. It was actually snowing. So no, I just wonder, are 6 officers really going to be adequate? I just keep hearing about those people that are out there speeding on Highway 20 coming down off the mountain. I know several years ago, somebody was going 126 miles an hour in their BMW. And I just wondered, are you able to still cover what you need to do for your community?
With
And welcome to the position.
with the 6 officers, that does give us nearly full coverage. So we at least have 1 officer on per day. So when time allows, we do try and get out on Highway 20 in front of the ranch. Deschutes County out of Sister's office works out there quite a bit too. So we do write citations out there. I've had a conversation with the new sheriff about some options. Maybe we can team up in some traffic enforcement moving forward too. So there are some ideas out there to try and slow our motorists down in front of the ranch and that whole Highway 20 section.
Well, don't forget all the elk that are out there too. And yes, and when you hit an elk, what is it? A Suburban flipped over by, Sisters not very long ago that hit an elk. So I know they want to build wildlife crossings over, but more law enforcement definitely would be helpful to slow that population down. I mean, they get so excited, they come off the mountain and they seem to think that they're at the Audubon or something. Yeah. So anyway, well, good. I'm glad you're here today. It's a 20% increase, but it seems for what PERS is costing, what our health insurance went up, you had no choice but to raise it.
Okay, well, with that, we'll close the public hearing on this matter. Any other comments, or is there a motion?
I move to pass our is it a resolution? Resolution number 2025-002, submitting to the electors in the Black Butte Ranch Service District an election on a 5-year local levy option to fund law enforcement services.
New 5-year local option. Right. Yeah. Second.
So just acknowledging it's 65 cents now, and then it's proposed to be 78 cents for this next one. So with that information, any other comments? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare.
Yes.
Commissioner Chang.
Yes.
And Chair will vote yes. Thank you very much. Great to see you. Item number 9, award of reconvening as a governing body of Deschutes County, getting in the groove here today. Award of agreement with Parnell Biogas for sole source procurement of landfill gas flaring equipment and startup services.
Good morning, Commissioner DeBonne, Chair DeBonne and Commissioners. For the record, Tim Brownell, Director of the Solid Waste Department here for Deschutes County. And this item in front of you is for the award of 2 Parnell Biogas for the sole source procurement of a new landfill flaring equipment and the startup services around that. So there will be 2 motions for you to consider. One is the resolution of support for the sole source procurement, and the other is for the contract with Parnell Biogas. This relates to some new legislation that was put into place in October of 2021, OAR 340-239. We refer to it as Senate Bill 239, which really regulates the landfill gas emissions, both surface emissions So we are now doing testing of the entire landfill every 3 months to determine if we're compliant with the emissions of particularly methane gas coming out of the landfill. But we also have a responsibility for collecting it and destroying that gas as well. In addition to the monitoring of the emissions, we also have to, under our new Title V permit, which was issued in 2023, we also have to monitor the emissions of that destroyed gas that's collected out of the landfill. So if you've ever been to the landfill, we have a whole system for recovering leachate, as well as underground piping that is under vacuum, pulling as much of the methane gas as we can to keep it from being released into the atmosphere. Then it is, if you've driven by the landfill at night, you can see a blue flame. Many times we get calls that our landfill's on fire. That is not the case. We are destroying the methane gas that's recovered. Under the new permit, not only do we have to test the methane gas, but we also have to test the emissions of the burned gases. So it's not just methane that we're burning. We have nitrogen, the things. So they really are looking at the discharge. It's basically the tailpipe of the landfill. That current flare that we have is what's called an open flare. There's no way to test the discharges off of that. So what this permit is requiring is we are going to have to purchase a new flare, what's called an enclosed flare. So once that's installed, which should take by the end of this year, you actually won't see that flame burning. It'll be within what looks like a giant canister. But with that canister, we are able to then do what's called source testing, monitoring of the discharges to make sure that the discharges out of that, in essence, a chimney, are compliant with state regulation. So this is a new condition of our permit. I do want to kind of step back a little bit. Just you know, I know you're aware of our methane gas to renewable natural gas project that we're working on. That project is fully underway. We're expecting that to be online by the end of this year, 2025. If not, then in early 2026, that will actually be recovering that methane gas, and instead of just destroying it, burning it, it will be transformed, cleaned and transformed, and then injected into the natural gas pipeline substation that feeds the city of Bend. That system will have its own destruction mechanism for the gases and the contaminants within the gas, but they will also take, they'll take the existing flare, and that will be a backup to burn off any gases if their system needs to destroy any gases. In addition to that, we will have a new flare if their entire system has to go offline for any reason. It's a significant investment. It's probably, we're anticipating it will only be operating at most 5% of the time, but it's a state requirement that we have to put this in place, and we have to be able to monitor it, monitor those discharges. It seems like a colossal expense for a de minimis use, but we have not been able to, there's no means to be granted an exemption under state statute. So the reason we move forward with a sole source is the current flare that we procured about 8 years ago is a Parnell biogas flare. A lot of the component pieces from that are going to be able to be used with the new flare that we're purchasing. So by being able to reuse some of those components, we're able to save anywhere between about $175,000 to $325,000. Bringing the cost of this new flare down from over $750,000 to around $425,000 or whatever the
428.
$428,000.
You're close.
So that's why we pursued the sole source procurement. We followed the guidelines as specified by state procurement to publish and move forward with this procurement. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Tim, my only question is, so we're concerned about the emissions after destroying the methane and and other things that are being emitted. What are those other things?
Siloxane, so there's hydrogen sulfite, is a gas that's emitted when it's burned. It releases hydrogen sulfide or siloxane, so they want to measure that and limit those amongst other minor gases. But
And what is what can you tell me what the concern about siloxane is? What is-
a lot of it is around particulate. It's smog producing. A lot of these regulations actually are mimicking what's going on in California. So it's more around kind of
prevention of
smog.
Okay.
And I would say it's not as pertinent to this part of the state, but it may be a little more pertinent to other areas in the state in which they may have those concerns. But it's a universal bill that applies throughout the state. And we're seeing these types of regulations. EPA has been over the last several years encouraging the development of these types of guidelines.
Well, I'm guessing whoever's immediately downwind of the landfill is appreciative that
Yes.
these things are being monitored.
So this is a window of time for a landfill that's going to be closed, but post-closure decomposition for the next 30 years is what
Yeah.
we're looking at here.
Yeah, and particularly in this environment, we are not a incredibly wet landfill, so we're not going to have a high yield and then quick drop off of landfill gas production. It's going to be kind of a long, steady decline after 10. We're going to probably peak production at about 15 years post closure, and then it'll continue. We're going to be having to destroy gas out there for 30 to 50 years.
And then is monitoring being built into the gas to pipeline system also, or does any of this monitoring support that system? I guess that's just kind of design and engineering things.
Yeah, they'll have their own monitoring controls for that facility. So they're getting their own permit, discharge permit, and have their own requirements.
Well, that's helpful. So this flare is Deschutes County's operating permit, and then there'll be another permit associated with gas to
Correct.
pipeline. Great. Well, and I know that we did, upsize that flare years ago, and if we're going down the path of working with the same company is the justification here for cost effectiveness. Any other questions? I have no further questions.
Oh, we haven't had any calls on any birds dying lately. Has that gotten any better, Tim?
No, we haven't. We have pretty good bird control, bird mitigation. We work with USDA on that. So no, we haven't had any complaints of bird passings.
Okay, good.
Well, and just reminds me, I did go to see that Roosevelt facility up on the other side of the Columbia, and they have multiple generations of reuse, the reciprocal engines, the jet engine, and now gas to pipeline. So they've tried it all. So hopefully you know, we've got maturity in the market, so we're not doing something that needs to be decommissioned less than what we expect for that long-term engineering effort. Is there a motion?
I'll move approval of resolution 2025-003 for the sole source procurement of supplying landfill gas flaring equipment and startup services with Parnell Biogas Incorporated.
And I'll second it.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
and Chair will vote yes. And the second motion,
I'll move approval of document number 2024-950, a contract with Parnell Biogas Incorporated for landfill gas flare equipment and startup services.
Second.
is there any appeal period associated with this? We're doing both today.
I don't believe so.
I believe the appeal period has already been exhausted.
Okay, so this was published previous to this. Got it. Okay, that was, yep. Very good. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
and Chair will vote yes.
Thank you
you
all.
very much. Item number 10, Health Services Behavioral Health Reserve Fund Policy. Behavioral Health Reserve.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Janice Garceau. I'm Director of Health Services. Nice to see you all this morning, and I will have Cheryl introduce herself and get us rolling.
Sure, Cheryl Smallman, Business Officer for Health Services. Janice and I are here today to move approval of the proposed reserve fund policy for Fund 270. This is the Oregon Health Plan Behavioral Health Reserves. Overall, what we were aiming to do with this policy is formalize or capture some guidelines that we've been discussing for this last several budget processes, as well as some internal conversations. This is a departmental policy, but we wanted to bring it in front of you all today in case there were other applications to this policy or thresholds that you wanted to have input on. Of note in the policy, one of the, I think, highlights is articulating that we're striving to maintain a cash reserve target of at least 90 days or 25% of operating budget on hand. It also clarifies some gray area in terms of Fund 270 and our operating reserve or operating fund, which is Fund 274. Those are appropriated together. So this articulates that we are required to have 8.3% contingency as a combination of those two funds. In addition to that, it articulates the use of the reserve funds. So really identifying it should be intended for one-time expenditures, loss of revenue that perhaps was unforeseen, as well as capital improvements, as well as infrastructure purchases that are outside of the capital improvement plan that's approved by the commissioners. And lastly, we articulate interest earned on the reserve. So how to use that, how to interpret that, whether or not it's program income. The funds that were received in the Behavioral Health Reserve Fund are Medicaid dollars, and they're through either the Coordinated Care Organization, through the Oregon Health Plan, or Certified Community Behavioral Health or CCBHC prospective payment. Both are Medicaid dollars that just flow through. So it's looking at how we use those dollars and keeping the interest earned in line with those programs as well. And with that, I'll see if there are any questions.
So this is in light of federal Medicaid dollars and state policy, and it's kind of right before maybe things are going to change. And I do support the fact that, you know, our 1963 deinstitutionalized effort, managing people in the community more, there needs to be those dollars. So this is maybe a mature way to document how those dollars are flowing. But also on the horizon, it's just great unknown, isn't it? I mean, I think that's where we're at. I don't know if there's any response to that. I was just sharing.
No, we're all braced for the unknown.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things I did want to to clarify, I mean, we already have a behavioral health reserve.
Correct.
So this is just kind of placing more formal and clear guidelines around that.
Yes, it's placing clear guidelines around it, making it clear that it doesn't remove any requirement that we would normally have as part of a budget process to bring significant investments of those dollars or expenditures of those dollars to the decision-making board, which is you. And just sort of spells out at least a principle that we've been talking about for a number of years related to what's a threshold for a reasonable cash reserve to ensure operations should there be some unforeseen circumstance. And we've done some research and looked at other counties and other reserve policies to try to have a sort of benchmark to use in the policy. And then we worked very closely with finance to develop the language and with legal as well. Well, with finance and I think legal reviewed, but definitely as they do any policy, and also encouraged us to bring this to the board to make sure that you're aware of it and approve.
So Cheryl, what is the balance then of, in today's world, of 270?
As of today, it's about 29 million. I project that it will end this fiscal year at about 34 million.
And so what are we doing with the interest then earned on that 29 million? Because it is rather significant now, is it not?
Yeah, annually it's roughly 750,000.
Right.
Yeah, so the interest earned is going back into Fund 70 and applied in the same manner that the other dollars are. So towards Medicaid or CCBHC related services, expanding services to Medicaid members, and a variety of other.
Well, it's been a primary way that we've been able to cover uncovered costs, which was the original intent of CCBHC. So in the last 4 years, we have had gaps that we have used reserve to cover. And we are projecting out that barring unforeseen changes, that mechanism will continue to function, and that by 2027 or 2028, we may actually be reaching that 25% threshold unless something dramatically changes either to the good or to the ill in terms of incoming revenue and outgoing expenditure. So that's really how those dollars get used. They get used to plug gaps. They've been used to replace county general fund, and they are also available to us should we have your approval to make some capital expenditure investments to address space issues. So those are kind of the primary areas where they're being used.
Do you mind for the community that's watching perhaps to explain what CCBHC is and how long it's been in existence? Because, you know, we're so used to using those terms, but what does that really mean to the public?
May I?
Yes.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Here we go.
CCBHC means Certified Community Behavioral Health Clinic. It was launched as a federal demonstration project in 2015, and then we became a grantee. The state of Oregon became a grantee, I think in 2016, and then funded agencies that applied to be recipients of that grant in Oregon in 2017. So beginning in April 2017, we became a certified community behavioral health clinic, which meant that we had to attest to being able to do certain things. One was see everyone regardless of their payer source. So this expanded community mental health services beyond just people with Medicaid dollars. And we now, close to 40% of the people we serve are working, probably lower income individuals. It required that we address homelessness. It required that we provide primary care on site in our locations so that people with mental health conditions and chronic health conditions were able to get medical care. It required that we address other kinds of social determinants of health, do more work with peer supports, people with lived experience, do more targeted case management to address things like rental needs, housing needs, food needs, all the things that people we serve often struggle with. And it also required that we do a lot more work with addressing folks that have been cycling in and out of homelessness or the incarceration system, the justice system. So I won't mention all the bureaucratic requirements. There are many. We had a 70-page application process where we had to attest to doing all the things that large organizations are required to do. Since becoming a CCBHC, we went from limping along, always trying to catch up with need, to having a reserve and being able to invest in expanded services to some of our most high-risk populations. I don't know how much more you want me to say.
No, but okay, so we have now $29 million. And all I'm saying is we've been talking about the fact that we have so few beds in Central Oregon and Eastern Oregon. As to repeat, Pendleton, the state hospital closed in 2014. And what do we need? We need secure residential. We need at least one or two more here. And so if we have accumulated 29 million, I would really hope that perhaps that's going to be able to use for part of the plan that's going on in Redmond. Is part of this money going to be used for that facility that we've been talking about?
So any money that we spend as behavioral health, if we have a gap, these dollars fill that gap. So indirectly, the answer to that question is yes. Currently, we have some grant funds and OHA dollars and state dollars that are already allocated for some of the housing projects that we're engaging in. Right now, we are looking at purchasing 2 homes, adult foster homes for people with mental illness, chronic mental illness who need supported housing, and for people with chronic mental illness and intellectual and developmental delays who are often extremely difficult to house. We are also engaged in a collaborative project to set up another secure residential treatment facility. I don't want to use the acronym.
Thank you for not.
Yeah, that would be a 16-bed facility for people that are seriously mentally ill and need to be in a secure facility, meaning locked. And those individuals, that will double our capacity in the region, which is pretty significant. We have one right now, 16-bed facility, so that would double the capacity. And then we're engaged in a project right now that we hope there will be some legislation passing soon that will help us look at establishing or working with partners to establish a treatment facility for children and youth. So how many of those reserve dollars go to those projects? It really depends on what our own budget forecast is. It depends on some of the other needs that we have to meet that are existing ongoing needs, and there are the appropriate services for a community mental health program to provide. And it depends on state or federal grant dollars that may be coming to the region to support those facilities. So we're always looking at how those dollars come together to support those sorts of things.
I mean, I would just say I'm really glad. Well, let me take a step back. First, I'm really glad that we have a reserve with a healthy balance, and it is the results of behavioral health providing excellent service and as comprehensive service as possible to our community, and just figuring out how to get it reimbursed, by whatever means are available. So that resourcefulness and that commitment to service is the reason why we have these reserves. And I'm also really glad that these behavioral health reserves are available for capital projects. There are all of the things that you just mentioned, Janice, that many of which are things that we are able to advocate for federal or state funding to support, like a secure residential treatment facility, or the hope for this year is that we will be able to secure state or federal funds to support a youth mental health emergency facility for acute and respite care. But we also really need to keep in mind that there are capital needs that we have within behavioral health, within health services, that we're not as able to secure state or federal funds for, such as the sorely needed behavioral health clinic in La Pine. And so when I'm looking at this dollar amount and I'm thinking about how we could spend some of these millions of dollars on our capital needs, that's the first thing that's coming to my mind when I'm looking at this at the balance in the reserve right now. And just wanted to kind of round out the picture of us talking about capital investment needs by pointing that out.
Thank you.
So yeah, I support this reserve fund policy. It's good to have a little structure around this. We haven't been in this spot before where, oh, there's a big number there. So let's, put some structure on what the intention of that is. And then also get into the annual budget, making sure the budget committee or, it's just part of the topic during the budget somewhere, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I hadn't thought about that real clear, but the fact that this is structure for us to maybe make some of those big block type decisions for these funds too.
Thank you. And just to kind of put some context around these numbers because they are large, a 3-month operating budget for the existing services we provide now is roughly $15 million. So you take that off of that amount. Our budget gap has been 2, 4, 6, and this year likely to be larger. Each year, you take that off of that amount, and any work that we do in La Pine, which is looking to be quite challenging, and we're in a period where building or renovating are both not cheap, takes another significant chunk off of that. So I just think it's important to sort of lay out the groundwork of what those dollars actually represent and the security it provides to our community that if things get tighter, we can still serve the vulnerable people that we've been serving well, which is our primary purpose.
And that's exactly the content we could have in a short segment of our budget discussions, just kind of on an annual basis is exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah. Thank you.
Is there a motion or any other questions?
If there's no more questions, I'll move approval of the proposed reserve fund policy for Fund 270, Oregon Health Plan Behavioral Health Services.
Second it.
Been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Adair,
Yes.
and Chair will vote yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you.
At this time, item number 11, public hearing. So this is Greater Sage Grouse Habitat Map Update. Welcome, Nicole.
All right, and I believe the chair has the script.
So this is the time, this is the time and place set for a hearing regarding file number 247-24-710 PA 737ZC. The hearing is to consider proposed map updates to the Greater Sage Grouse Area Combining Zone. Staff will outline the hearing procedures that will be followed.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Nicole Mardell, Senior Planner with Deschutes County Community Development. So wanted to note the full project website and full record are found at the link here, which is bit.ly/2024 Sage Grouse. Today, the Board of County Commissioners will take testimony and receive written evidence concerning the proposed text amendment. The hearing is also being recorded. The hearing will be conducted in the following order. Staff will provide a brief presentation. Agencies, if present, will then provide their testimony with a 10-minute limit per agency. Interested persons can then provide their testimony, aiming for a 3-minute time limit. And following testimony, the commission can, the board rather, can request the applicant or staff answer any additional questions. This is a hybrid public hearing with both in-person and remote participation options. Before starting your testimony, please provide your first and last name as well as your mailing address so we can add you to the notification list. For those that are in person, if you wish to testify, please fill out a blue sign-up sheet and submit it to the board's executive assistant, Brenda, to the left of the dais. Chair DeBone will then call up in-person participants for their testimony. After your name is called, please come up to one of the tables at the front of the room and begin your testimony. For our remote participants, if you wish to testify, you must be logged into Zoom or have called in using the Zoom dial-in option. When the chair asks if anyone would like to testify, you'll need to use the raise hand feature to notify the board. That's found under the reactions tab there. If you called in, you need to dial *9 to notify us of your raised hand. In addition to oral testimony, if anyone has written testimony to submit, please hand that to me. If you're participating remotely, you can submit your written testimony via email to me at nicole.mardell@deschutes.org. The chair and staff are responsible for conducting an orderly hearing. Any testimony or behavior which is inappropriate will be addressed and may result in that member of the public being removed from the hearing. Questions to and from the chair may be entertained at any time at the chair's discretion. Cross-examination of people testifying will not be allowed. However, if any person wishes to ask a question of another during that person's testimony, please direct your question to the chair after being recognized. The chair is free to decide whether or not to ask such questions of the person testifying. Prior to commencement of the hearing, any party may challenge the qualifications of any commissioner for conflicts of interest. This challenge must be documented with specific reasons supported by facts. Should any commissioner be challenged, the member may disqualify himself or herself, withdraw from the hearing, or make a statement on the record of their capacity to hear and decide this issue.
So this is a plan amendment zone change package for sage grouse habitat area. Does any commissioner have anything to disclose? And if so, please state the nature of same and whether you can proceed.
I have nothing to disclose, and I believe I can proceed.
I have nothing to disclose and I can proceed.
And I have nothing to disclose and I can proceed also. Does any party wish to challenge any commissioner, a member of the hearings body, based on conflicts of interest? Anyone online? Seeing none, the hearing is now open. Staff will proceed with a brief staff report.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner. So I'm going to give just a brief background. If my PowerPoint will move forward. So the board has heard a few updates on this throughout the process, but just wanted to give brief background for anyone who may be listening in. So the sage grouse combining zone currently exists in Deschutes County. The reason that it exists is that in 2010, sage grouse were identified as a candidate species for the Endangered Species Act by U.S. Fish and Wildlife. So there was deemed a threat to their habitat and their population numbers. In order to avoid officially listing this as an endangered species, ODF&W coordinated with the Land Conservation and Development Commission on a conservation assessment and strategy and habitat maps to look at some strategies to greater preserve habitat and reduce degradation to the species. So what that led to is in 2015, the Land Conservation and Development Commission adopted Oregon Administrative Rule 660-23-115, and that established 3 habitat areas that needed to be protected for sage grouse. Those are core, low density, and general habitat, and those are significant areas that are within 3.1 miles of a lek. Their rules place limitations on large-scale development. So agricultural uses are exempt, things that don't require a land use permit are exempt, but this regulates things like utility.
Nicole,
Go ahead.
could you explain what a lek is for people in the audience that might not know?
Absolutely. Yeah, lek is a breeding grounds for sage grouse. So important to their species to be able to continue to breed. And it also includes their strutting grounds. So if you've ever seen a video of a sage grouse doing their strut, I'd highly recommend it. It's very entertaining.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So these rules were focused more on large scale development. So things that produced a significant number of vehicle trips, a large amount of noise for a sustained period of time, or impacted a large scale area. So this rule required 7 Eastern Oregon counties to implement the rule directly. This is quite different than any other Goal 5 inventory. For instance, for our mule deer inventory, that's something that the county has adopted locally. So we have the authority to amend or revise that over time. This is coming directly from the state, so we have extremely limited ability to alter or amend any of the regulations. We did adopt our local greater sage grouse combining zone in 2015, and that was intended for ease of use for property owners. The state maps are at the state scale, so it's very hard to see individual property level information on low density or core habitat. So we adopted that local inventory so it was more clear to property owners if they were in or without this boundary. It primarily impacts land that's in the eastern portion of Deschutes County. So out near, here's the map here, out near Milliken, Brothers, and Hampton area, is where you see kind of the most habitat. So I recognize that this is very hard to see up on the screen, so I do have a copy here if anyone would like to look at it. But essentially in 2022, ODF&W started the update process. So it was written into the Oregon Administrative Rule to revise these maps regularly. So they began the process to update these in 2022 using new coloring data and modeling information that they had collected over the years. And they did conduct pretty extensive property owner coordination through 2023, including outreach to Deschutes County Planning as well. They had a process where property owners could contest the maps, but made it very clear that, a property owner couldn't just say, hey, I don't see sage grouse on my property. You had to actually provide a biological study or biological data to counteract what ODF&W had produced. So in Deschutes County, what we see in terms of the change is an overall reduction. You can see the overall boundary is shifting slightly southeast. There's actually a removal of the general habitat that doesn't exist statewide anymore, just due to the fact that they had that more detailed coloring data about the core and low density sites. So that no longer exists in Deschutes County as well. And there's just a slight shift to the core and low density habitat areas. Overall, we're seeing a reduction of about 27,000 acres or so. So a slight decrease in population in Deschutes County, or in that mapped habitat area in Deschutes County, rather. We're seeing about 70 properties that are non-federal, so privately owned, state or county owned, that are remapped from low density to core. So they'll be subject to more extensive regulations, and 32 that will be remapped from core to low density. So they'll actually have less restrictive requirements for large scale development. And overall, we saw just a kind of a property swap. We saw about 180 or so properties being added in, 180 or so taken out. With that, wanted to note that the maps were adopted by the Oregon Fish and Wildlife Commission in December of 2023, and the Land Conservation and Development Commission, as they needed to update the map in the Oregon Administrative Rule, they had their public hearing on January 23rd, so just a few weeks ago. The county did send a Measure 56 notice on their behalf to properties that were impacted by the changes. And at that public hearing, there were some public comments, but they were directed primarily at Grant County. Grant County had some newly mapped area, and they previously weren't included in those 7 Eastern Oregon counties. So that was the focus of the conversation. So LCDC did vote to unanimously adopt these updated habitat maps, but they held off on some of the definitional changes that they were planning to include, which pretty much addressed that Grant County issue. Now that LCDC has adopted these maps, we're required to hold our local hearing to update the Greater Sage Grouse Combining Zone map. But as I mentioned previously, we have quite limited local authority on this matter. As they are adopted, if a property owner came in today, if our map didn't match the one that the state has, it would automatically default to that state map. So the goal of the local hearing today is really to get these maps to be consistent with each other to reduce confusion to property owners. Wanted to note that we did get two public comments rather. I received one that was general opposition to the regulations. I did speak with that property owner after they submitted their comment and let them know that their status actually isn't changing. So they're in low density and will remain in low density. So they found that to be satisfactory. And we also did have an inquiry just about the state hearing and the process related to that Measure 56 notice. So with that, options for the board following testimony today, you have your standard options of continuing the hearing to a date and time certain, closing the hearing, leaving the written record open to a date certain, closing the hearing and setting a date for deliberations, or closing the hearing and commencing deliberations. But our recommendation today as staff, as this is a bit unique, would be to close the hearing following testimony, deliberate, and conduct first and second reading of Ordinance 2025-001 in your packet by emergency. And that would, again, move ahead this process to be able to have these maps be consistent with each other. So with that, I welcome any questions.
Nicole, I have a question. In our packet, it said that there were 180 tax lots, 11,124 acres that will be removed. But then it said, well, 188 tax lots will be added. So how many acres are in the 188 tax lots? I couldn't quite figure it out from the chart up above.
That's a good question, Commissioner. I don't have that data in front of me. I did get a specific kind of table from our GIS analyst. But yeah, overall, it was just kind of a shift in the size of tax lots. We're seeing an overall decrease, even though 180 is being added in, 188 or so is being taken out.
I know. I was like, is
Yeah.
it the same? Yeah, that's what I was curious. And then it said 32 tax lots, which is only 3,600 acres, were remapped from core to low. So anyway, I just was wondering.
Yeah, good question. I can research that
Well,
information and
okay, well, I know it doesn't change what we have to do today to match the state, but it was just something I was wondering about.
Nicole, my first question was about the public comments. So thank you for giving, you already answered my question about the kind of the nature of the public comments and then the opposition. My second question is just, it's not unrelated to what we're talking about, but I would just like to get an understanding at the high level, big picture about how sage grouse are doing in this part of their range. We are, this eastern portion of Deschutes County is really about it's the farthest out piece of habitat that they have when you look at kind of the stronghold in eastern Oregon. So if we're kind of on the edge of sage grouse habitat concern, I'm just curious whether the populations in that corner of the area of concern are doing, are stable, are declining, are strengthening. Do you have any sense for that?
yeah, that's an excellent question, Commissioner. We are involved in the local implementation team for sage grouse. I will note that the focus of that local implementation team has mostly been for the pack that's in Prineville. We're kind of lumped into that, the Brothers Pack, priority area for conservation. And so when we've attended those meetings, we've heard that generally sage grouse are stable in those two packs. There's been a lot of effort for restoration projects in Prineville, a little bit less in Brothers, but the pack or the local implementation team rather just did receive a grant. I could look up in my notes how much it was for, but I believe that they are going to start doing some additional restoration work in the Brothers Pack. So we might see some, potential increase in population for sage grouse numbers through that. But I'm also happy to invite, if you'd like a brief update, Skylar Vold is the state's sage grouse representative from Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. And he's an expert on, how sage grouse or what the numbers look like in Deschutes County and across the state. So I'm happy to invite him. And then once the coordinator is hired for the local implementation team, because that's vacant right now, could invite them to provide a brief update to the board if you'd like more detailed information.
Yeah, I'd like a little bit more detailed information. If depending on whether the other commissioners are interested in that, I'd be happy to just receive a short written update as well.
Well, I mean, if there's somebody who wants to come in and tell us the great opportunities of saving the species, I'm not opposed to that or written. Yeah, so I'm just saying.
I mean, you mentioned that this fine tuning of these maps is based in part on, tracking radio collared birds. So, I assume that means that if they still think that there's this amount of, core habitat, that there's a reasonably strong population in that core habitat. So.
Absolutely. And then I think one thing that I haven't mentioned already is that ODFNW is updating that conservation assessment and strategy, but it's a little bit delayed behind these updated habitat maps. So that, to my understanding, will include much more specific information about the data, kind of the current state of sage grouse. So I think they were planning to post a first draft of that within the next year or so. So I can reach out and ask when that's coming. If it's going to be delivered relatively soon, then it would be, I think, helpful to have maybe an item where we could debrief that conservation and assessment strategy and invite them to attend. or if it's a little bit delayed, we could just ask for, a written update that I could share with the board.
That'd be great. Thank you.
So this is a public hearing on the matter. Any other questions on the board?
No.
Is there anyone here to testify on this matter? Sage grouse habitat map update. Is there anyone online? Nice tight package today. Nobody's here. So with that, we'll close the public hearing. This is an update to the comprehensive plan. And so when we say zone change, this is as overlay zone, I guess. Yeah. Help me understand that, because
Yeah, so it's a zoning map amendment because it's one of our combining zones. So it's the greater Sage Grouse area combining zone. So we'd need to amend it on our official zoning map, which will then be on dial.
and then Measure 56 notices have gone out. Tell me more about that. I mean,
Sure. Yeah. So we mailed the Measure 56 notice on December 4th on behalf of LCDC and Department of Land Conservation and Development. I wanted to note, I did get about 10 phone calls from property owners just asking questions, because if you've ever received a Measure 56 notice, it can be pretty hard to
go
understand.
ahead and explain that real quick. So that's, a zoning or a land use associated with your property that may be affecting development opportunities or,
Sure, absolutely.
terminology.
Yeah, so due to this map update, due to some of the properties being added in and some going into that core designation, which is more restrictive, there is a limitation on property development rights. So as part of that process, when the state does rulemaking, or if we did rulemaking locally, that reduce the potential for property development, we're required to send out what's called a Measure 56 notice, which clearly explains that property rights could be restricted by that regulation. And, it's your time to testify, and also that you could seek, compensation for that loss in your development potential. So we sent that on behalf of Department of Land Conservation and Development. They reimbursed us for that, of course, but we are the keeper of the assessor's data where we could have mailing addresses for property owners. So that was mailed. I can look up the specific number, but quite a few property owners. And we received about 10 or so phone calls. Most folks were just trying to understand, for a lot of them, their property status wasn't changing. So they're just wondering, is this an opportunity to rehash some of the regulations? LCDC noted that wasn't in the scope. It was only the map change. And then they were contemplating some minor definitional changes, basically to just refer to these maps. But they weren't contemplating any change in the actual on the ground, restrictions. So that was the majority of calls that I received. And then just some folks who were curious about the state of sage grouse.
Great. Thank you.
Nicole, I'm just curious where the Roth East Ranch is. That was the second in line for our landfill site. It looks like it's still here in the middle, maybe?
Tim's behind me. I did look at this. I want to make sure that I have the correct one.
I know.
Understanding that it's south of Milliken,
no.
in that low density habitat area. So somewhere in here.
It's for the record, Tim Brownell, Director of Solid Waste Department. Yes, it's still in the low density habitat. The core habitat now comes right up adjacent to the Roth East property within probably 100 yards or so. You can see that. I don't know how to point it out on a map, but it's this parcel right here.
Okay.
But there's that dark green circle in that area, and that's Milliken.
It's just
Southeast. Yeah.
southeast of that.
Yep.
You'll see it's shaped kind of like, I don't know what state that is, but yeah, it's still just out.
Southeast of Milliken.
Okay, so it's still, but it's in the low density.
It's in low density, but
Just
adjacent
outside.
to core habitat.
Okay, thank you. I was just curious.
Okay, so the public hearing has been open and closed on this topic. At this time, is there support for deliberations and getting to a possible first and second reading?
Sounds like we need to do this, yes, as an emergency, because if someone comes in, we will default to the state map.
Yeah, if there's not a lot of discretion here, then I see no reason not to proceed right to deliberations and first and second reading.
Okay, well, with that, yeah, is there a motion then?
So move.
I mean, I guess that was our deliberation, so now we're ready for motions. So you're moving first and second reading by title only
Right. To
by
adopt the-
emergencies.
Yes, to adopt ordinance number 2025-001 by emergency.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. And this would be the readings of it. So at this time, calling for the vote, Commissioner Adair,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang.
Yes.
And chair votes yes. I would just acknowledge that a little surprised that we're proposing by emergency today, but I do support the fact that it's a package that's pretty mature and complete, and it is aligning with the state map. Just showing my hesitancy to dive into definition of emergency for land use. With that, I will do the first and second reading. First reading ordinance number 2025-001, the first ordinance of the year. An ordinance amending the Greater Sage Grouse Combining Zone to comply with changes to Oregon Administrative Rule and declaring an emergency. And second reading, ordinance number 2025-001, an ordinance amending the Greater Sage Grouse Combining Zone to comply with the changes to Oregon Administrative Rule and declaring an emergency. Is there a motion for adoption?
Move, just legal counsel, maybe you can coach me here. Move
Adoption of ordinance number 2025-001 by emergency.
by emergency. So moved.
I'll second it.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Adair.
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Project complete.
Very much, commissioners, and I'll follow up with information about, an update on the status of sage grouse and their habitat numbers. So
No, I think it would be really good to find out what the numbers are doing. So it's been 10 years, right? Yeah, so let's see what is this CARE doing? Thanks, Nicole.
And if we do a full-on presentation like that, it would be great to bring back Dr. Stu Garrett to talk about the conservation efforts that whatever the organization is called now that used to be Audubon, East Cascades Audubon, is pursuing out there in the Brothers area, because they were involved in some significant work.
absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, item number 12, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and Access DEIA Committee discussion. So this was added to our agenda following our agenda meeting last Thursday. And it was just determined this would be a policy choice for the Board of Commissioners. Yeah, well, you put a memo together, Nick, and you've mentioned that the committee has created a first work plan focusing on assessment of existing DEIA initiatives. Employee retention was a big item, it's kind of the action item, and then employee communications. Anything else?
No, commissioners, I provided the update. Just the only other update is that I provided an update to commissioners on the status of the committee's work over the past week or so, just given that it's becoming ripe for consideration, and based on conversations we had in our individual meetings, which are private meetings, and they're just conversations between us. I heard different perspectives from commissioners regarding the committee and the future of the committee, which we discussed, and then in coordination, as you stated, with legal counsel and administration believes this is a policy level decision for the board to consider whether we continue with the work or we sunset the committee, and if it's sunsetted, then some of the work would then transition to the Human Resources Department. And then, as you stated, based on we hadn't completed those conversations by the time that we had the agenda conference for today's meeting. That concluded after the fact, and then I coordinated with you, the chair, to update the agenda this week. And the board doesn't meet next Monday, and so we decided to schedule it for today.
Great. So, and this is not a public hearing on the matter, but it's really kind of a go, no-go point in time for a committee of departments and some staff. So I've got my thoughts, but anything else to share?
I heard you were going to share first. That's all I heard.
Say a few things first.
Sure, if you like.
Before we make any decisions on this item, I would like us to hear from county staff who've participated in this DEIA committee on what has been accomplished by our departments, through this work to date, and what may be accomplished in the future in this draft work plan that will both benefit benefit all Deschutes County residents by ensuring access to the important services that we provide, and B, by ensuring that the county staff reflect and continue to reflect, I have particular concerns about employee retention, continue to reflect our community in general. So these are two very worthwhile reasons to consider supporting this work. I just to go back in history a little bit, I do want to remind everyone that this Board of Commissioners did not want to support the county organization having a DEI initiative. There were staff who took it upon themselves to address some critical needs, access to services, reflection of our, representation of our general community, and meeting basic requirements that were being put on us by federal and state grantors. So those are some of the reasons why staff has undertaken this work without us driving it. And I just want to dwell on that for a moment, because I believe that there are national dynamics that are trying to eliminate these kinds of efforts, but this was not a Board of Commissioners directed effort, and it did not come from the top of the county. It was just basically a functional work group that was created to address certain needs, and in that respect, I don't think is necessarily subject to any kind of national efforts to eliminate DEI efforts. This is just work that staff is doing to better serve our community and to ensure that we're reflective of the people that we're serving. So I don't really understand why we are discussing this at this point. Why it was urgent to put this on our agenda on Monday afternoon, giving people very short notice, giving me very short notice that this was going to be considered today. But if that is the reason, the driver behind this, we have concerns about, a national push to eliminate efforts like this, I think we can say, this is not a board directed effort from the top in the first place. This is just things that staff are doing to, better serve our community. And we can, deflect, any pressures coming from the national level in that way. Just say, we can rename this work group something else that doesn't have D, E, or I in the title, and let people continue to do their work. But I see no reason, for us to be discussing this today on such short notice, and B, to consider dissolving this committee.
Thank you very much. So there was a request to have staff speak on this. I'm not supportive of that. Would you be supportive?
No, I think we heard from
Yeah, so we'll proceed.
a lot of people.
Well, I guess, then I would like to make sure that anyone who's watching today, community members, media, understand that some of the considerations that staff wanted to offer to us have been outlined in this letter that the three commissioners received in detail. And I'll do my best to represent some of these considerations during this discussion.
Okay, well, so as I say, we've got goals and objectives to Deschutes County. We're here to serve everybody in the county. I'm wearing my Love All, Serve All pin, and I didn't know this was going to come to a moment like this months ago when I'm like, oh yeah, well, this is what we do. This is why I do it. Enhancing the lives of citizens by delivering quality services in a cost-effective manner. We just had our full day retreat annually. We're not proposing change in the words in our goals and objectives. The motto and the mission of Deschutes County, provide solution-oriented services, cost-effective and efficient, support and promote Deschutes County customer service every time standard, continue to enhance community participation, proactively welcoming residents to engage with county programs, services, policy deliberations. These are all in our goals and objectives. We publish this every year. Prioritize recruitment and retention initiatives to support, sustain, and enhance county operations. So, I mean, as a technology person, I think of the impedance mismatch when you hear like an 8-ohm speaker or a 4-ohm speaker for the audio files or something. It's like we're having a hard time finding the common ground on this, and it's odd to me. So, yeah, I mean, I'm supportive of not having 4-hour billable time across departments in the focus of how can we, as I say, and it's tricky to use any words around this, so I'm not even going to use anymore. And then, as I say, we got 90 emails. I checked right before we came, 90 emails, or a few of them are phone calls, which is wonderful. Please engage. I've heard everything, and I'm taking it in. So government policies and services that are inclusive, effective, and accessible to all residents. I support that. No one can be discriminated against because of age, sex, gender, disability, etc. I support that. Reflect the capabilities and vibrant community that lives here today. I support that. So I mean, saying, why are we even having this discussion, which maybe is Commissioner Chang's conclusion? County is obligated to ensure disparities and are addressed and that all citizens are served in a way that meets their needs. I support that. A diverse and inclusive community that attracts businesses and talent, which boosts the economy. So I don't even see disconnect per se. So,
well, let's talk about what this committee has helped to accomplish. This committee has helped to accomplish improvements in language access for non-English speakers to county services so that we can genuinely serve 100% of our population. This committee has helped to develop expertise in creating plain language materials and ways for hearing, mobility, and visually impaired individuals to improve access to services. This committee has helped to address internal concerns of staff identified in anonymous engagement surveys in order to improve staff retention. So that's, again, back to ensuring that our staff is reflective of the community that they serve. So, and there have been substantial contract requirements for federal or state funding that have demanded these efforts of us, again, with the intent to ensure that everyone has access to these services in our community. So in answer to your question, why are we talking about this? That's why we're talking about this, because this committee has accomplished many things, many valuable things for our community in terms of ensuring access to county services for everyone. And I believe, if we looked at this work plan, we would probably see that there's still a whole lot more work to do.
So as I say, if we're going to get to a vote or however we want to proceed, it's.
I can say a few things.
Okay.
It really sounds like what's been going on out here with this group should really actually be happening within our HR department, the HR department, which lets us know what's happening, how long people have been staying with Deschutes County. I know that we used to have a retention of like at least 9 years people were serving, you know, most of the things you just said, these contractual requirements by the federal government are now gone. Last night I was reading the Wall Street Journal, and of course, what did they say about DEI? They said universities are suspending research projects. They are canceling conferences, closing offices in a volley of orders from President Trump's banning diversity, equity, and inclusion across U.S. government. These directives have to do with money. And, you know, you're saying rename it, but honestly, it sounds like it should be in our HR department. It should have been there before. I know we clearly worked on having Spanish language speakers when we were talking about COVID. That was something that the county always worked on. So I feel, you know, we're doing something, we're following the precedent from the top. And normally, as we heard today, the state was in charge of our map for the sage grouse, and the federal government is in charge of a lot of funding that comes to Deschutes County, and I would hate to lose it.
I guess I would respond by saying that we had the opportunity to focus a lot of this work to happen through our HR department, but the Board of Commissioners declined to do that in the past. So if I'm hearing a kind of renewed interest in exploring that, that's something that we could consider. But on the question of ensuring access to county services, the HR department does not know how to do that as well as the direct service provision departments of the county. So I don't, you know, I regardless of what is being said, you know, from the federal levels down about funding, we have this fundamental question of how we ensure adequate access to county services from all of our residents and citizens. And I haven't heard any good suggestions on how we do that without having a committee like this.
Two other things. So culture eats strategy for breakfast. Peter Drucker, how to run a high-performing organization. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. So I would assert that this is the culture of our organization, and we're trying to find something else to do with this. I mean, hopefully we can agree upon that. We're here to serve the people, and then also treat others as you'd want to be treated. So as I say, I mean, it's as simple as that.
The culture of our organization is what produced this working group. The employees in all of these departments across Deschutes County who are concerned about providing excellent service to our community are the ones who needed a kind of focus point in order to do the work to ensure that access to services. That's where this work group came from. So this is, you want to talk about the culture of our organization. This work group is the culture of our organization. And what's impinging upon that culture of service is politics.
So is there anything else to be said here?
Gee,
So as I
we
say,
could talk all day, couldn't we, about
Yeah.
this?
couple of years ago, you know, I was running for office, got reelected, and it came up, are we going to do this? And it's like, well, I don't know. The terminology doesn't kind of make sense. I want to serve all the people. So now we're at a point where we're making a policy choice in a public meeting in front of the world, when recording. And I would say that I do not support a staff-led committee of DEI efforts under those terms. But all the other items I've said are very much supported. Any staff person that has issues, talk through management, policy, I'm available, phone calls, emails, let's communicate.
Yes.
So,
Would you like to let staff?
well, let's
would you
make
like
it,
to let staff make some comments?
no, thank you.
We've gotten lots of comments from the community.
Well, as a leader of this, I'll say, I'll make the motion. As I say, and it's not, I mean, as I say, I don't understand the disconnect. And I'm not going to go there right now. So, I mean, I'll make a motion that, as I say, in its current form, it's terminated, and it's really just a structural item here. And hopefully we have the common culture of the county. So that's a motion if there's a second.
I'll second it.
So it's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion?
Clearly, I'll be opposed.
Seeing none, Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang?
No.
And chair votes yes. So now we've made that decision. Thank you very much for joining us today, and yeah, keep communicating.
This is
Well,
this
but
is the
if-
exact opposite of.
But if you don't stand, I mean, think of all the words I used here, and if we don't,
There's words and there's actions.
yeah, okay, it's all good.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the business of Deschutes County. At this time, are there other items for this board meeting?
Yes. Other items? I would like to propose that we do a resolution appealing on behalf of the entire county, Senate Bill 762, the wildfire hazard map. So I know that hundreds of our residences received the certified letter from the state regarding the designation of their properties, and the concern is just rampant. So
Well-
I believe that this is an important proposition.
So, I mean, I absolutely support having a discussion about the wildfire map, because people are just like, we've seen a lot of push and pull on that right now. So what can we do to get I don't know if we want to have a public hearing or just, an outreach, education session or a community meeting on the fire map to get people going. I've seen people respond very directly on that, and then also learn a lot more. And they're like, oh, I just need to do my fuel reduction on my property. So I don't see it as, I see there's a huge education opportunity before I would come to the conclusion that we wanted to, make a resolution opposing it.
There is a property by property appeal process available to people. There's a hotline available for people who want to complain about their classification. I see no need for us to do more than share that information with anyone who wants to appeal their classification.
I would like it to be on the agenda next Wednesday, if that's possible.
Well, yeah, so let's talk, I support doing action on that. So Nick, you can help us out, whatever procedure we might want to do. So. 'Cause I'm getting
people
emails
are,
directly at me,
they're
why
like,
don't you stand up, Commissioner? And I'm like, well, it's education.
There is a gross lack of understanding in our community
so
about this
education.
policy,
The words I just-
about the relationship of these maps to people's insurance coverage and premiums.
the problem is the gross award of your property if it's high risk, and the value, and you're trying to sell your property. So now this has really affected people's, their main asset of their life, their house, and what the state did. So I can understand what people are, incredibly frightened and discouraged, and they feel like, something is really not right. And I believe that we need to discuss it next Wednesday and give those people an opportunity.
I would encourage you, if you want to have a discussion about this, to
Commissioner Chang, I've had plenty of discussions about this.
let me finish.
No, I really wanted to finish myself. It's not
Did
right.
finish.
No, I didn't. This is not a positive thing for our citizens all across the state.
If we're going to have a discussion about this, I would encourage you to contact the State Insurance Commissioner, Andrew Stolfi, who can explain the dynamics of the insurance industry, what is happening to people's coverage and premiums, the relationship to these maps.
Commissioner,
Maybe as part of the presentation that you have here in front of the Board of Commissioners.
would you want to be involved with a kind of a structure and agenda of a meeting like that? Commissioner Chang?
I don't think it's necessary to have that meeting,
So the
but
answer is
if
no.
it's,
You'll critique us about how we want to proceed, but
Yeah.
you don't want to be involved.
well, I didn't hear a definitive decision that we were going to put this on the agenda. If
So I
it
was
is going
asking-
to, if it is
yeah.
going to go on the agenda, I will participate in
Because you can add value to it.
development of the
That's why I'm
agenda.
asking you that. Yes. Thank you.
But
Okay, so,
until I hear that
that's
a
fine.
majority of the board wants to put it on the
oh, I do.
agenda.
I do.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I think it's,
And
I think it's really
put
important.
it out a couple of weeks so that we can adequately prepare
And as I say, I'm
and get the
supportive
people
of
who
that too.
actually need to speak, who actually have some understanding of this issue, to be here.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner Chang. I'm glad you clarified that.
So on other items, I was able to attend the Civil Air Patrol graduation, Amelia Earhart Award last night. So, yeah, with the tension in the room, I'm just giving updates of everything I have. And then also, COIC board meeting on Thursday night will be the first one of the year. We're going to be selecting the chair and setting the group, a couple new elected officials to be at that seat also. We do have an executive session today, but let's take.
I have an.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, please.
So the local public safety coordinating council met yesterday. We received extremely powerful testimony from a young woman who, a justice involved individual, who had challenges with addiction, repeated cycles of contact with law enforcement, and was granted a downward departure from Judge Ashby himself, who happened to be at the local public safety coordinating council meeting, and just gave an incredible story about her journey of getting to treatment, pulling her life together, getting custody of her daughter back, and basically explaining how that with the support of parole and probation and the rest of the justice system, she was able to get clean and make her life work again. I would encourage my two fellow commissioners to watch basically that first 20 to 25 minutes of the local public safety coordinating council meeting to witness that, and also to just reflect on the way that the county services that we provide to people literally save lives on a regular basis.
That's exciting. Thank you so much for sharing. Is there anything else?
Oh, as long as you're recognizing that from the local public safety, I wanted also to acknowledge what M Perfectly does and the people that they work with. And, they've had 20 people that have graduated from their program to date. It's an amazing program. So thank you to Ashley Smith, who runs that program. I think it's outstanding too.
Yeah, and Perfectly was one of the partners that was mentioned that's involved with the Justice Reinvestment Program.
Great. Yeah, no, she does amazing work.
Anything else, Nick? No. So as I say, at this time, we have executive session scheduled following this regular meeting. Yeah, so let's acknowledge we're going to go into executive session and then just take a 10-minute break is what I'm thinking.
Then we'll go ahead and read the announcement.
Yep.
The Deschutes County Board of Commissioners will now convene an executive session pursuant to ORS 192.660. The specific authorization for this executive session is ORS 192.660 subsection 2E, which allows the board to meet in order to discuss real property negotiations. Designated staff and the media are allowed to remain during the executive session. However, the media may only report that the board met in executive session and the identified basis for meeting in executive session. Recording devices are not permitted. No final decisions will be made in executive session, and at the conclusion, we will open the doors and invite the audience back to the meeting.
Great, thank you. So as I say, we'll convene that executive session in 10 minutes, and then when we're done, we will acknowledge it's over. Thank you. All right, so we are back from our executive sessions today. There were 2 items. Is there anything else for this board meeting? Seeing none, meeting adjourned.